Hey guys, welcome back to Trek on the Tube. Star Trek Discovery Season 1 finale has just been released. Episode 15, Will You Take My Hand? And it's time to review it and break down all of the Easter eggs. The many Easter eggs. Okay, so right off the bat, let me just say that this episode was disappointing. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I have a lot of problems with Star Trek Discovery, but there's also a lot of things I truly love. And I'm going to talk about all that in my full Season 1 review. Today, though, I'm going to try and keep this as focused on episode 15 as possible, and talk about why this episode in particular didn't work for me. And then, of course, the tons of Easter eggs. So, episode 15. To put this plainly, I was bored. Now, that's nothing new when it comes to Star Trek, because it does tend to be one of the faults the franchise has. But back in the day, when you were bored watching a Star Trek episode, it would usually be because nothing was happening, or that one minor event was being dragged out for as long as the episode had to run. And yeah, that sucks. But times were different. Not only did the production teams have to create from start to finish an episode a week, but they also needed 26 episodes per season. And then, taking into consideration every episode had to be its own thing, of course some ideas were gonna fall flat. Discovery, on the other hand, has none of these excuses. The season only has 15 episodes and it's serialized. Sold as a climactic ending to a very busy season, this should not have been boring. And the reason why it was boring was because somehow nothing really made sense. Starting with the fact we're expected to believe one tiny bomb can blow up Kronos entirely? That's ridiculous. It's a plot point worthy of only the worst science fiction, where every single weapon is overpowered and makes no sense. And then L'Rell? Don't get me wrong, I don't mind the fact she now leads the Empire, but why did she even agree to go along with the plan in the first place? Once she had the detonator in her hand, why doesn't she just finish off the Federation? Klingon values, I hear you say? Honor? What honor? She's holding the entire Klingon Empire hostage. She's blackmailing the leaders of the houses into following her. She eats humans. I had dismissed that before because I thought everyone was starving, but she clearly states in this episode that the Emperor needs seasoning. So it wasn't a life or death situation. Klingons now officially eat other species. And then there were other things that didn't really affect the ridiculous plot but still bugged me. Like Emperor Georgiou not even trying to hide the fact she was from the Mirror Universe? What is she trying to instigate a mutiny? I mean, sure, the Federation put you there, but still, you need your crew to follow you. And then when she's talking about Tyler, she keeps referring to him as it 4 times in under 20 seconds? And then Burnham tops it all off by dropping an insistent he. We're not idiots. You don't have to make everything so transparent. There's also that scene where the Emperor is briefing Tyler and Burnham on the mission. She says she wants someone else to come with them and turns to the door and says enter. Tilly enters. So, what? Tilly was just standing there in the hallway? Alone? For how long? Why couldn't she come into the room and listen to the briefing? It's just stupid. So many things in this episode just fall into place because it's convenient or simply don't work at all. I don't know. I'm sorry to say this, but every issue I had with this episode came down to bad writing. The sets looked fantastic, from the street to the shrine to the sort of club they go into, just amazing. The CGI was great as well. The costumes, the makeup, the acting, flawless, seriously. But goddamn, the story sucked. To be clear, I'm not saying that all the writing was bad. I'm saying that the elements that were bad were so due to the writing. Simply put, the whole thing felt rushed and forced and, ironically, not very fleshed out. Yeah, bad episode. Bad finale. Okay, Easter eggs, references, and stray observations. There were a lot this time around, so how about we just start with alien races. The first being, of course, the Klingons, because one of them is seen urinating, and the process is somewhat different from us humans. Frankly, this doesn't have much impact on canon, apart from raising a few questions as to how relationships between Klingons work with other species. Dax, for example, married Worf, and I can only imagine how interesting that must have been. It's only appropriate we carry on with this woman, because she's clearly a Trill, just like Dax. I've seen rumors around saying that this could actually be Dax, but it's a bit far-fetched, I think. The galaxy is a big place with a lot of people in it, so let's not assume every person is always someone that we've already seen before. We move on to the Orions. First seen in the form of slave girls in the original series, they were later fleshed out a little more in the double-episode arc in Enterprise. Traditionally, it would seem Orions have a pronounced green skin color, but the animated series gave us some light blue ones as well. Granted, this was due to coloring issues, but maybe Discovery took that skin color into consideration because they showed us something a little different. The Orions seen in this episode seem to all have varied skin tones, these two being almost white. Another change was seeing an old and then a skinny male, whereas until now all of the Orion males we've seen have been pretty bulky. It is logical though that not everyone from any given race is exactly the same, so the changes make sense. The male slave dancer though, I'm not so sure. You see, Orion females have a peculiar effect on males due to their highly potent pheromones, and so they use their dancing to their advantage, toying with men from not only their own race but many others across the galaxy. This guy is probably just a drug-addicted prostitute. Poor guy. Okay, moving on and going back to how I said the costumes were very good in this episode, I just wanted to mention this outfit feels very original series, and I like that. We then move on to Tilly and Georgiou's short conversation, in which the Emperor mentions both the Betazoids and the inhabitants of Mintaka 3. Betazoids have already been mentioned in Discovery by Harry Mudd and seen multiple times in The Next Generation, and the inhabitants of Mintaka 3 are these guys, also seen in The Next Generation. We finish our list of alien species with this shot of what seems to be Seti eels from the Wrath of Khan, and of course, Gormaganda meat on a stick. Next, we'll talk about planets, moons, ships, stations, etc. We see multiple shots of Earth and its moon, both of which are inhabited as they should be. Riker drops a line or two about this in First Contact. On Earth, we get to see a few scenes in Paris, a city commonly shown in Star Trek. And above Earth can be seen this bad boy, Earth Space Dock, under construction. It was first shown in The Search for Spock, and then in multiple other movies. I talked about it in my episode 14 review, and I must apologize because I showed you a screen cap from The Next Generation. Though the model used was the same, technically it wasn't the same space dock, so here's the right one. We also see Kronos and its moon Praxis. We all know Praxis was destroyed in 2293 in the Undiscovered Country, but in Discovery it's right where it should be. I praise this one shot of Kronos. I especially love the buildings in the background. They look a lot like the Klingon designs we've already seen before. And now we move on to probably the biggest Easter egg of all, the actual Enterprise itself. Boom! It has been slightly redesigned, and though I don't really understand why, because the original design would have worked just as well, I'm fine with the way it looks. I won't be doing a full breakdown of the changes, but our good friends over at Trek Yards did, so I'll put a link to their video in the description if you're interested. I'll limit myself to saying that Captain Pike and Spock should be on this ship at the moment, and the events depicted in the cage have already occurred. I'm very intrigued to see what uniform they're going to be wearing actually, and how the show manages to explain the differences. And that leads me away from ships, stations, and planets perfectly, because I did want to show you these interesting uniforms featured near the end of the episode. Some are saying they could be the final design to this production shot we saw. All I can say is the color looks a lot like Spock's uniform in the cage. The rest are actually pretty random, and I don't really know what order to go with, so as they come to me. The officers are decorated with triangular medals, which ties into the original series where they also had triangular medals. The Orion drug dealer we mentioned just a few minutes ago is played by actor Clint Howard. He's already appeared multiple times in Star Trek over the years, but his very first appearance dates back to the original series where he played Balok in the episode The Corbomite Maneuver. L'Rell gets beat up by Georgiou and her blood is red. We discussed Klingon blood colors when the season began, and it would seem there still is confusion. There were a lot of references and mentions of Molor, a big bad Klingon from Once Upon a Time, first mentioned in The Next Generation. These pistols are Nausicaan. The Nausicaans were first introduced in The Next Generation and later reappeared in both Deep Space Nine and Enterprise. They're essentially space bullies. The Darsek is an already established currency used by the Klingon Empire, and the text used for the Orion language is the same in Discovery as it was in Enterprise. I would finish with this spelling mistake, but that's just mean, so instead I'll finish with moving photographs. GIFs in a frame, essentially. That's never been seen on Star Trek before. I don't know what to think about it. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. I know my review was a little aggressive, but a bad episode is one thing. Being let down by something that could have been so much more is, to be honest, worse. I will soon start working on my full Season 1 review, and yes, don't worry, it will be as objective as my review of the Orville. In the meantime, like, subscribe, share, comment, and live long and prosper.